This video contains my thoughts about the first level of Half Life Alyx, Levitation, spoilers and all. This is not a full playthrough, go elsewhere for that, or better still, experience it for yourself. That's kind of VR's appeal after all. Levitation starts straight after Half Life Alyx finishes. The floating vault that contains the G-Man, like I said, this video contains spoilers, immediately crashes down and the G-Man briefs you in a vague and mysterious way for a while.
Such an increasingly fit asset.
And you know they knew what they were doing with the wording there. If I'm honest, vague and mysterious sums up most of this first segment of the game. You can find out what Levitation's all about from the workshop page's description. G-Man's initial speech doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and neither do the alien landscapes you walk through just afterwards, but it serves as a gentle introduction to VR again, and does give the impression of deja vu when you have finally reached them for real later on in the game. Put it simply, Levitation is about these resistance fighters who have gone to a floating building and you've got to head there yourself, which will somehow help beat the Combine. And that's pretty much the last you hear of it until Levitation ends. I think Russell's later advice of don't die and continue to not die is probably a better explanation for Levitation's chapters and the constant threats that Alyx seems to stumble into. Not that I mind too much, because I'm here for the gameplay. Besides, Half-Life has never been a series to cram the story down the player's throat. It's normally a vague get-to-here objective, and the memories are made from the journey along the way, and from the discoveries that the player decides to make. Half-Life 2's progress benefited visually from the Citadel, looming in the distance and getting closer as the game progressed. Alyx had that floating vault thing that Levitation just blew up, and despite Levitation having its own floating building that you're meant to be heading towards, you don't see it throughout the game in quite the same way. The gnome you had to take through Half-Life 2 Episode 2 to earn the achievement is here as well, presumably for another achievement of some sort. Here's what I thought to that. And then it's off to the clock tower. I was totally oblivious to this at the time, but in this bit of the game, time has frozen, and you've got to get the big clock moving again for stuff to continue, and for a floating sofa to drop down to allow you to escape this clock tower. Climbing this stairway quickly reminded me that turning corners in VR isn't ideal when you've got a cable coming out of your headset. I think Alyx's main campaign went to great lengths to minimise the number of turns you had to make, which this clock tower most certainly does not do. In this playthrough I use teleport because, seemingly unlike everybody in the comment section, I find it makes me less sick than continuous motion does. But regardless of how you choose to play in VR, snap angle changes makes a lot of sense if your headset has a cable attached to it. So even though I hadn't cottoned on that time had frozen, I still got through the section with ease just by following gameplay cues. Once time has started up again, you're briefed by Russell. And I'll show you this bit because it's quite amusing.
I took your signal half an hour ago in the old clock tower. I'm heading into the metro now and making my way over to you. Let's meet inside, and definitely don't die in the meantime. Actually, don't die at all, ever. Just continue to live, Alyx.
Got it.
This adventure over the rooftop serves as a quick movement tutorial to get you used to VR again, and you need to get used to it quickly because it doesn't last long. During this tutorial stage, I noticed something rather queer going on. Levitation's use of coloured lights, especially red ones, misled me a number of times. I often found myself drawn to stuff that looked like it needed poking at, when actually it didn't. Sometimes it was the thing I needed to solve, and other times it was just there as decoration. It feels like Alyx's main campaign would draw your attention to where a puzzle starts, whereas Levitation highlights the end of one and expects you to work your way back to where it starts. There's often a larger physical distance between the cause and effect. And this was more of a thing earlier on in the campaign, but I often knew where I had to go but didn't know how to get there, or I had activated something but didn't know where the resulting change had been made to. It's less intuitive. Maybe it's less dumbed down. But it probably added a good 20 minutes to my playthrough length, where I assumed the game was trying to tell me something when actually it wasn't. Yep, I'm one of those annoying people for whom game devs have to simplify their puzzles for. I might be stuck in these places for longer than I should be, but I don't mind too much because they're absolutely beautiful, and of similar quality to Half Life Alyx's. It doesn't come for free, mind, and the developer of these maps, Pone, has borne the brunt of it. He tweeted earlier this year about how long it takes to render these levels. And this very tutorial area took him 14 hours to render. So if you're wondering why bug fixes to Levitation are taking a few days to come out, it's probably because poor Pone's PCs are grinding away at this sort of stuff, and I suspect his PCs are fast. It just isn't being helped by how big some of these maps are. But thank goodness they are, for they gave me the freedom to explore that I felt was sorely missing from Half-Life Alyx's main campaign. Maps in that felt very small and claustrophobic, maybe because Valve hated the long compile times too. And I love the height used in Levitation. There are lots of times where you're leaping over large drops or peering over the side of tall structures, which again, I didn't see as much as I wanted to in Half-Life Alyx. And I thought this was the whole point of VR, to make us feel scared and vulnerable and very small in the grand scale of things. So hats off to Levitation for achieving this.
Train!
And then, the moment you hit ground level, the combat begins, and it is tough. If you've recently finished Half Life Alyx or consider yourself to be a good VR player, then you might find it refreshing to be stripped of all your equipment and to face off against tougher enemies with starter weapons again. It's the sort of thing that tends to happen at some point in the second half of most games. But if you're feeling a little rusty, then Levitation's first encounter will come as a bit of a shock. You see, Half Life Alyx didn't put you against Combine until after several levels against easier creatures first. And by the time you faced the gun-wielding enemies, you had a number of weapons at your disposal and had had time to earn a number of upgrades for them. And even then, the engagements are only against a few enemies at most, all in situations which favour your position and provide you ample cover for you to hide behind. Meanwhile, Levitation's first fight doesn't care for any of that. You're in an empty hallway facing off against multiple Combine, all shooting at you from different angles. You don't have that much ammo and they are bullet sponges. I beat it first time, but it was still a little rough for me, leaving me on low health and with no way of healing up, which raised the stakes for the next bit even though not a lot happened. Along with the bug fixes, it looks like Levitation's first patch will aim to make this first encounter more manageable. Truthfully, some of my favourite moments in games have been when I've been dropped in the deep end and have had to somehow pull through against all of the odds. But to start a lengthy campaign like Levitation with this segment, especially in VR, will cause a lot of potential players to drop out before even getting started. I think the best solution would be to make Combine less bullet spongy, have them die in a single headshot, and then I'd be happy to fight against even more of them. But if that isn't an option, then at least provide more ammo before entering the fray, provide the player with more cover and have the Combine all attack from the same sort of direction, and then provide a healing station immediately afterwards. Because I was still in tutorial mode at this stage, and I'm sure a lot of other players will be too. And then it's just a case of figuring out how to get down to the metro station to meet with Russell. I was exploring this area for quite a while because there are all kinds of goodies hidden about, like resin and equipment inside the cars and stuff. And earlier on in a game like this, I feel more inclined to explore and to try and 100% complete it. So I really love areas like this. I just wish I wasn't so low on health, because for this whole time my health warning was going off and the background music and sounds were quite loud and overwhelming for what's essentially a really pleasant moment of exploration. The bigger and more open the area the game gives you to explore, the more important I feel it is that the game clearly signposts where you've got to go when you're done with that area. Now this bit of Levitation isn't too bad for this, but I do feel a few easy changes could have made it even clearer. What you're meant to do is to follow the black cables from the blue force field back to the control panel. I didn't do this, I discovered the control panel while exploring. But it doesn't help that the cables are plain black in colour and disappear into the drains for a while, which to me indicates it's simply decoration, rather than be an important part of a puzzle of sorts. And then, once you do activate the control panel, the blue force field you can see from that spot doesn't deactivate. And I'm in mixed feelings about that. I feel it could have made it clearer what had changed when you press the button. Maybe it could have lit the cables up to hint the player they've got to follow them, but what it definitely shouldn't do at that moment is to distract the player with a massive flying enemy gunship the moment the button is pressed, which sends the wrong message about what might have changed with that button press. Anyway, that's just a minor thing, but it is interesting seeing other playthroughs doing similar to me where they're just a little unsure what has changed when the button is pressed. Anyway, once you're down in the metro, you're looking for this to start the next puzzle to open the door, which also took me a while to find. Again, follow the cables and it makes sense, but a plainer background or just a light of some sort to highlight this detail would have been appreciated. Because this isn't meant to be the puzzle is meant to be the thing you trigger after you find it. Anyway, that's the end of the first proper level of Levitation. I had intended to make this a quick summary of the campaign, but apparently I have a lot to say about it. And oh dear, it looks like I still haven't noticed that I'm meant to be following the black cable. Not sure if that makes me a good or bad playtester, but if you can't wait to see what other obvious stuff I don't notice, let me know and I might make a part 2.